Somewhere between silence and echo, an ancient mechanism sleeps. It is known as the Kandana Caves, but no one knows who created it or why it is still alive. On the slopes of the Western Ghats, where the humid air is saturated with the scent of earth and moss, lies a complex that challenges our very notion of human capability. Its name whispers like the breath of ancient wind, the Kandana Caves. Few travelers reach this place by chance. Even the locals who live at the foot of the hills prefer to avoid it. They say the stones there breathe, and at night, lights wander between the walls like the breath of an unseen being. Scientists claim that this is an ancient Buddhist monastery, carved into solid rock more than 2,000 years ago. Yet the more they studied the site, the more questions arose. 16 caves connected by corridors form what seems to be a single organism designed with astonishing precision. The height of the halls stuns the imagination. The stone is polished as if melted by an unknown energy. In some wall niches, the surface reflects the beam of a flashlight like a mirror. The first explorers who came here in the late 19th century described strange marks on the ceilings, traces of tools that did not exist at the time. Metal would not leave such patterns. They also discovered perfectly symmetrical arches, shaped like wooden structures but without a single joint. It was as if someone had transferred technology from another world, one in which granite obeyed the craftsman's will like soft clay. Local legends claim that the caves were not built by humans. They tell that one day, a fiery circle descended upon these lands, and the earth trembled. When the flames subsided, passages opened in the mountain, and inside, people saw columns formed not by hands, but by pure energy itself. Since then, monks have come here, believing the place to be sacred. They listened to the stone, convinced it preserved the memory of guests who came from the sky. Modern archaeologists attempt to explain the complex's origin through natural means. They speak of decades of labor by monks, of hand chisels and iron wedges. Yet even under the most optimistic calculations, such a structure would have required centuries and the effort of hundreds of people. How could monks, living in humble communities, possess such resources? The question remains unanswered. Some theories suggest that Kandana is part of a much larger underground system extending deep into the earth. Certain researchers claim that, several kilometers from the main complex, there are collapsed tunnels leading to other chambers. Satellite images have captured strange geometric lines, as if a network of hidden passages lies beneath the surface. If this is true, then what we see is not merely a monastery, but a fragment of something far more ancient and vast. When you stand at the entrance of the main cave and gaze into the darkness, a faint humming seems to rise from the depths. It is not wind, nor echo, but something else, like the vibration of a living heart. Tourists describe the feeling that the space itself responds to their presence. Each step resounds, and every sound returns like an answer. The Kandana caves seem to wait. They breathe a silence filled with anticipation. For centuries, people have come here seeking answers and none have left certain they understood anything at all. Perhaps it truly is a trace of another civilization. Or perhaps it is simply the memory of the earth itself preserved in stone as the imprint of an alien touch. If you follow the narrow road leading away from the bustling city of Lonavala, through a tropical forest where vines hang from branches and the ground is rich with moisture, a landscape soon unfolds that seems to have stepped out of an ancient painting. Among mist-covered hills, between two modest peaks, lies the entrance to a world of stone ancient and silent. Here, about 30 kilometers from the modern town, hides one of India's most mysterious archaeological complexes, the Kandana Caves. The road to them is not easy. It winds between cliffs, dips into fog, and then suddenly ends at a steep precipice. During the monsoon season, this path becomes a true trial even for seasoned travelers. Thick clouds descend so low that the hilltops vanish from sight. The forest around fills with sounds that seem alive, perhaps the cries of birds, perhaps the distant echo of invisible streams. And only when the damp air grows heavy with the scent of moss and basalt do you realize that the destination is near. The entrance to the complex is barely visible. It does not draw attention, as if nature itself is trying to hide it from curious eyes. From afar, it looks like a simple dark crack in the mountain, but as you approach, the contours of an arch carved with perfect precision begin to emerge. Beyond it begins silence, a special kind of silence in which the familiar sounds of the world disappear. Even your own breathing feels loud, and your footsteps echo dully, as though the cave is listening to every movement. Kandana lies on the southern slopes of the mountain range the locals call Raigad. This region is rich in underground springs and ancient rock formations. Geologists claim that millions of years ago, volcanoes raged here, and the hardened lava flows created that unique type of basalt from which the caves were carved. Yet how ancient craftsmen managed to work with such material remains a mystery. The stone here is dense, with a crystalline structure so hard that even modern drilling tools leave marks upon it. Archaeologists have pinpointed its coordinates, but the site remains difficult to access. It seems to live its own life, outside of time. Only rare research expeditions reach it to take measurements or photographs. The rest belongs to nature. By day, bands of sunlight lie across the cliffs. By night, when mist rises from the valley, the caves are enveloped in a dense milk of silence. There are no large villages nearby. The closest settlements lie several kilometers away, and locals say that at night a soft glow sometimes flickers over the hills. No one can explain its origin. Some believe it to be a rare form of bioluminescent fungus, others think it is gas escaping through fissures in the rock. But the elders insist that these are the lights of the ancient builders returning to the resting place of their creations. From the outside, Kandana seems small. But once inside, the space suddenly expands. Tunnels descend into the depths, connecting halls carved on multiple levels. Some corridors end abruptly, others lead to circular chambers where traces of carving still cling to the walls. Here one feels the hand of an engineer, not merely a craftsman. Everything is arranged with such symmetry that it seems as though every angle, every current of air, every reflection of light was calculated in advance. When researchers compared the layout of the caves to a map of the night sky, they discovered a strange coincidence: the main halls mirror the pattern of the Orion constellation. It is difficult to dismiss this alignment as mere chance. Perhaps the ancient builders sought to create a reflection of the heavens upon the earth. Perhaps they believed this place to be a gateway between worlds. Today, the road to the caves is open to tourists, but those who have been there admit that the feeling it leaves is unsettling. It's as if every step resonates not only through the stone but also through time itself. Kandana is not merely a geographical location, it is a node where past and future intersect, a place where a person confronts the limits of understanding and senses that beneath their feet lies only a thin layer separating the known from the unknown. Official science approaches the mystery of the Kandana caves with cold precision, striving to separate legend from verifiable fact. Researchers classify them as part of the early period of Buddhist architecture. It is believed they were created during the time when the teachings of Buddha were just beginning to spread across western India. Archaeologists date the complex to around 2,000 years ago, during the Satavahana dynasty. Yet even among experts, there is no consensus on who directed the construction or for what exact purpose it began. The main feature of Kandana is that it was entirely carved into a solid basalt rock formation. These are not simply caves but carefully engineered chambers. They include meditation halls, monks' quarters, ritual stupas, and an intricate ventilation system. All of this creates a sense of architectural unity, as if the builders possessed engineering knowledge far ahead of their time. Scholars agree that such structures required immense labor, precise calculations, and strict organization. But one question remains unresolved: what tools did the ancient craftsmen use, given that iron was not yet widely available? Traces of carved ornamentation remain on the walls. Some depict scenes from the life of Buddha, others show abstract symbols resembling spirals and geometric patterns. Researchers suggest that these designs may have served not only a religious function but also an acoustic one. At certain sound frequencies, vibrations within the halls are amplified, making it seem as though the stone itself begins to sing. Modern acousticians have confirmed that the shape of the chambers indeed produces a resonance effect. This could explain why builders of many ancient Indian temples placed such importance on the form and proportions of vaulted ceilings. In the mid-20th century, archaeologists conducted a detailed study of the caves. Samples of the rock were collected and examined under microscopes. The results revealed that the surfaces of the walls had been heated to temperatures at which basalt becomes pliable. The official explanation attributes this to the use of fire and controlled burning to soften the stone for carving. Yet even this theory has inconsistencies. The temperature required to make basalt malleable is far too high to be achieved by ordinary fire, and no traces of charring were found on the walls. This has led some specialists to speculate that the ancient builders employed a different method, perhaps chemical treatment or a type of thermal process unknown to modern science. Reports from the archives of the British Archaeological Society describe one of the earliest expeditions. In one of the halls, researchers discovered fine traces of a substance resembling quartz dust. This material is found in rocks that have been subjected to intense pressure and vibration. Some scientists interpret this as evidence of natural geological processes, while others suggest that the dust might have formed through the use of sound waves or vibrational tools. Such hypotheses are not officially accepted, but they continue to surface in academic discussions as a tantalizing possibility. Supporters of the classical view argue that the Kundana caves are not unique. They belong to a larger group of rock-cut monasteries scattered along the western Ghats alongside Bhaja, Karla, and Betsa. All of them share similar architectural features, suggesting the existence of a unified construction tradition. Yet even within this context, Kundana stands apart for its precision. The dimensions of the columns align with striking mathematical regularity, and the angles between the walls are maintained with almost no deviation. Such accuracy is difficult to explain as the result of mere manual labor. Some archaeologists cautiously suggest that part of the work might have been done using rudimentary mechanical devices such as stone pendulums or drills rotated by rope systems. However, no trace of such tools has ever been found. There are no fragments, no sketches, no depictions that could clarify the technique. All that remains is the finished result. The official position remains firm: the caves were made by human hands. Yet with every new study, one senses that their creators knew more about stone than modern geologists do. They used light, sound, and proportion as though they understood the invisible forces connecting matter and energy. For science, this remains a mystery, but it is precisely such mysteries that keep the story of humankind alive. The Kundana caves stand as a silent witness that the limits of possibility are always wider than we imagine. When one first steps inside the Kundana caves, it feels less like entering a temple and more like stepping into the heart of a vast mechanism built for a purpose we no longer understand. Everything here follows a strict order. Every column, every arch, every ledge seems measured by a single law. The space is not chaotic, it breathes in rhythm, where geometry meets silence. Archaeologists call it the pinnacle of ancient Indian rock architecture, yet those who have spent time here admit that the sense of ordinary craftsmanship fades within minutes. The main hall astonishes with its symmetry. It was carved into a single block of basalt and resembles the interior of an enormous ship. The ceiling curves in a soft arc like the vault of a cathedral, yet without a single seam. In the center stands a stone stupa, simple yet majestic. Its surface is perfectly smooth, its proportions so exact that a modern engineer would call it a model of design precision. When a beam of sunlight passes through a narrow slit near the entrance, it illuminates the stupa as if someone had calculated the trajectory of light for that exact day and hour. The walls of the hall bear marks of tools, but these marks are strange. They do not resemble the blows of a chisel. Instead, they form smooth, continuous lines, as if the material had been removed layer by layer in one motion. The rock did not split or crumble, something impossible under normal manual methods. Some specialists suggest that the builders used a process of heating and cooling the stone, creating microfractures that made cutting easier. Others are convinced this is evidence of tools unknown to archaeology. Along the walls run stone beams that imitate wooden ceilings. This detail is common in many Buddhist caves, but in Kundana it is rendered with exceptional care. Even the texture of wood is reproduced in stone with uncanny realism. Why ancient craftsmen chose to replicate a material unavailable to them within solid rock remains a mystery. Some believe it was a tribute to tradition, others see it as an attempt to recreate the memory of an earlier architecture, one that existed long before the age of stone. In the side chambers, known as vihara, there are small cells. Their ceilings are low, but their walls are polished to a mirror-like shine. In shape, each cell resembles a capsule, creating the impression that whoever enters is completely cut off from the outside world. Perhaps this is how the ancient monks achieved a state of total inner stillness. Or maybe these chambers served another purpose connected to rituals that can no longer be reproduced today. The acoustics deserve special attention. Any sound uttered in the central part of the main hall reverberates multiple times, forming a pure resonance. Scientists measured the frequency of these vibrations and found that the cave's architecture amplifies certain ranges of the human voice. This means that a person reciting mantras or prayers would hear not only their own voice but also the response of the space itself. Perhaps this was how the builders sought to create the sensation of a higher presence. Modern engineers note that such precise acoustic design could only have been achieved with an understanding of the laws of sound and geometry, knowledge which, according to the official view, was unknown at that time. On the ceilings of some halls, protrusions remain that resemble ribs. They serve no structural purpose but create a sense of movement. Standing in the center and looking upward, one experiences the illusion that the stone is rotating. This visual effect recurs in many ancient structures associated with rituals of consciousness transformation. In one of the halls, archaeologists discovered a niche containing traces of a fine plaster coating. Analysis revealed the presence of tiny mica particles known for their light-reflecting properties. This may indicate that the walls once shimmered, enhancing the sensation of radiance. Perhaps the builders intended to recreate the sky within stone. That would explain why the vaults and columns are aligned along lines corresponding to the positions of the stars. The layout of the complex astonishes with its deliberate design. The corridors form closed loops, allowing movement in circles and returning to the starting point. It resembles a labyrinth where the path has neither beginning nor end. For monks, this may have symbolized the cycle of rebirth. For proponents of alternative theories, it represents a model of an energy field designed for the concentration of power. Every element of Khandana breathes intention. It was not built merely as a place of prayer but as a mechanism capable of influencing human perception. Here, everything is interconnected: form, light, sound, and orientation. Official science sees this as a manifestation of ancient architectural genius. But for those who feel the stone, the Khandana caves remain a portal, a place where architecture becomes the language through which the earth speaks to the sky. When archaeologists first examined the inner walls of Khandana, their attention was immediately drawn to markings that did not correspond to any known stone-cutting technique. On the surface of the basalt, they observed parallel lines, as though made by a rotating instrument moving at a constant speed. Yet even today, with modern machinery, it would be difficult to reproduce such perfect uniformity. Laboratories attempted to attribute this phenomenon to the natural characteristics of the rock, but the results were contradictory. Under a microscope, the crystals of the stone appeared as if fused together, as though they had been exposed to high temperatures or to an energy capable of altering the mineral structure without destroying it. Some researchers, reluctant to enter the realm of sensationalism, cautiously referred to these marks as anomalous erosion. But geologists immediately pointed out that natural processes do not produce such symmetrical forms. In some niches, there are rounded depressions with perfectly smooth walls. They resemble drill holes, yet the diameter of these cavities changes with mathematical precision, as if someone had been adjusting the rotational power. In official reports, these structures are described as possible traces of ancient tools of unknown type. The strangest discovery was made in the middle of the last century. In one of the side chambers, a group of researchers found on the wall a thin layer of a substance resembling ceramic glass. Analysis revealed that it was not a natural film, but an alloy of quartz and microscopic iron particles. Such a compound requires temperatures at which basalt begins to melt. Archaeologists attempted to explain this as the effect of lightning, but for a uniform layer to form, lightning would have had to strike the same spot several times in a row, something impossible within an enclosed space. In the lower corridors, where tourists rarely venture, fragments remain where the stone appears to have been cut by a soft blade. These lines show no impact marks, there are no chips or fractures whatsoever. Supporters of alternative theories are convinced that some kind of vibrational or acoustic energy was used here. They cite legends that speak of singing masters capable of breaking stone with their voices. Modern experiments show that sound waves can indeed create resonance in certain minerals, but only with a power source far beyond anything available to ancient builders. One report from the Archaeological Survey of India mentions the discovery of a small piece of rock detached from the wall of the complex. Its surface bore traces of micro-cutting, similar to those left by a laser. Microscopic examination revealed layers of micromelt typical of rapid heating. Such effects are known in metallurgy but are extremely rare in archaeological artifacts. Scholars avoid making bold claims, yet the very existence of such evidence challenges conventional ideas about ancient technology. Some of the halls of the Kundana complex astonish with the precision of their joins. The points where the vaults meet the walls are finished with minimal gaps. Modern engineers have compared these surfaces to machine-level tolerances, finding deviations comparable to those achieved in laboratory granite polishing. This raises a question: why would a monastery require such engineering perfection? Religious structures did not demand mechanical precision. There are other oddities. In several caves, holes have been found that extend deep into the rock but end abruptly. They are all set at the same angle and form a geometric pattern resembling an energy grid. None of these openings show soot or any signs of human use. Perhaps they were drainage shafts, but they are executed with such care that their true purpose remains uncertain. In the 20th century, some Indian scientists attempted to apply magnetic analysis methods to Kundana's stone. The results were unexpected. Within the main hall, fluctuations of the magnetic field were detected that did not correspond to the natural background of the area. The readings changed depending on the time of day, as if the rock responded to the position of the sun. This anomaly remains unexplained, but reports note that similar effects have been observed in other ancient Indian structures, where architecture appears to have interacted deliberately with natural energies. For some, these facts are merely the result of imperfect measurements; for others, they are hints of lost knowledge. Perhaps the builders of Kundana possessed methods that allowed them to manipulate matter without brute force, creating architecture that united physics and sound. If so, then these caves were not just a sanctuary, but a laboratory of the ancient world, where technology and spirituality had not yet been separated. The Kundana caves do not exist in isolation. They are part of a vast network of rock-cut complexes carved throughout western India. When archaeologists compared them with other monuments from the same period, they found both similarities and striking differences. This entire architectural line follows the course of an ancient trade route along which caravans once carried spices, stones, textiles, and teachings. It was along these roads that Buddhism spread from Magadha to the sea. Yet nowhere, not even in the famous Karla or Bhaja caves, does one feel such an unusual energy as in Kundana. Karla, the oldest of them all, rises on a hillside and is known for its grand hall. Its columns are massive, adorned with carved elephants. But inside, one feels a solemn heaviness. Its architecture pulls the spirit toward the earth. Kundana, however, breathes differently. There is no luxury here, no lavish decoration. Everything follows the principle of perfect purity of line, as if the builders sought to create a space where sound and light, not form, were the main elements. In Karla, a person feels like a guest in a temple; in Kundana, one feels like part of the stone itself. When compared with the Bhaja caves, Kundana shows only superficial similarities. In Bhaja, the chambers are close together, the ceilings low, and the walls bear traces of ancient frescoes. Those caves speak of human labor and the daily lives of monks. Kundana, on the other hand, evokes a very different impression. Its scale defies practical function. The space is too vast, the proportions too precise, for it to have been merely a dwelling. Architects refer to this phenomenon as excessive geometry, when form surpasses necessity. Later cave complexes, such as Ajunta and Ellora, abound in sculptures, murals, and ornate details. They belong to an era when religion blended with aesthetics, the age of artistic flourishing. Kundana, however, contains none of that. Here reigns a strict simplicity: no statues, no decorations to distract the mind. This silence of form seems intentional, as though the builders followed a design where the goal was not outward splendor, but the creation of an energetic field shaped by proportion and sound. Scholars, after comparing all these complexes, concluded that Kundana stands apart. It represents a transitional period from wooden to stone architecture. Yet one question remains: why was this transition so perfect? Elsewhere we see signs of experimentation, builders trying, failing, and learning. But in Kundana, there are no signs of trial or error. Everything is executed flawlessly, as if the builders were not inventing something new, but reproducing knowledge already long known. The internal dimensions of Kundana's halls astonishingly coincide with the proportions of Karla and Baja, yet the shape of the vaults is entirely different. In Karla, the ceilings are massive and heavy; in Kundana, they are elegant and light, curving like ocean waves or the dome of a planetarium. Some researchers have noticed that the curvature of these ceilings matches the form of a sound wave recorded in a resonator. This observation has led to the hypothesis that the ancient builders deliberately selected the geometry to amplify vibrations. A comparison reveals another mystery. Almost all Western Indian cave temples are oriented toward the east, allowing the morning sun to illuminate their interiors. Kundana, however, faces northeast, a rare deviation that seems intentional. According to astronomical calculations, it is precisely at this angle that the sun rises on the day of the spring equinox. At that moment, a beam of light passes through a narrow opening and strikes the central stupa with remarkable precision within just a few centimeters. Such alignment is difficult to explain by simple construction techniques; it implies a deep understanding of astronomy and long-term observation. Another distinction lies in materials. In Karla and Baja, the walls still show traces of plaster and paint. In Kundana, no such coating has been found. It seems the builders deliberately left the bare rock exposed. This gives the halls a stern beauty and a sense of timelessness. The stone breathes; it is not hidden beneath layers of pigment, it is alive. Perhaps that was the intention, to keep the structure open for interaction with sound and light. For historians, Kundana remains an enigma. It is older than many well-known temples, yet it looks as though it were built after them. Its perfection does not fit the evolutionary timeline of architecture. Scholars describe it as a regional peculiarity, but the phrase itself sounds like an admission of helplessness. When Kundana is placed beside even the magnificent caves of Ellora, the difference is striking. In Ellora, one feels the human hand; in Kundana, something greater. Perhaps all these monuments are chapters of a single story. Perhaps Kundana is the first court of an ancient knowledge that was gradually lost, overgrown with ornament and dogma. Then it becomes clear why its space feels so pure, so alien. It preserves the memory of an era when architecture was not art but a science, one that united heaven, earth, and sound. When archaeologists and historians encounter facts that cannot be explained within the framework of known cultures, the question of a preceding civilization inevitably arises. The Kundana caves have become one such point of inquiry. Their precision, scale, and engineering logic are inconsistent with the technological level attributed to their supposed builders. The deeper researchers delve into the details, the stronger the sense grows that they are looking not at a beginning but at a remnant of something far more ancient. Some researchers believe that Kundana is not merely a monastery but a surviving fragment of an earlier complex that existed long before Buddhism. According to this theory, monks merely repurposed pre-existing caves, giving them religious meaning. Supporting this idea are markings on the walls unrelated to Buddhist symbolism, geometric patterns resembling star maps, and stone niches shaped like the outlines of unknown devices. All this suggests that the builders were creating a space designed according to principles of sciences long lost to us. Supporters of alternative archaeology link Kundana to a hypothetical civilization that existed long before the Great Flood mentioned in the legends of many peoples. They suggest that in the territory of what is now India there may once have been cities that possessed advanced knowledge of geometry, sound, and energy. These people, it is believed, could have used vibration to shape stone and constructed buildings in which form itself had a functional purpose. Perhaps the Kundana caves were part of a system connecting the planet's energetic nodes. Skeptics dismiss such ideas as fantasy, yet even they acknowledge that Kundana contains architectural elements found nowhere else. The most intriguing are the vaults executed with such mathematical precision that they generate a special acoustic field within. Modern instruments record low-frequency vibrations in certain areas that do not correspond to natural background noise. This has led some physicists to hypothesize that the builders might have used resonance not for aesthetic, but for practical purposes, perhaps to alter states of consciousness or even matter itself. Ancient Indian texts, especially the Vedas, contain references to structures built by the people of light, who could move mountains with their voice. These lines are usually regarded as poetic metaphors, yet for those who have seen Kundana, they sound different. Perhaps they describe not a myth but a technology lost over millennia. After all, the stone here truly seems to obey the form of sound. Some researchers draw parallels between Kundana and other enigmatic sites around the world: Peru's megaliths, Baalbek's basalt terraces, and Cappadocia's underground cities. Though separated by thousands of kilometers, all share one defining trait: an inexplicable precision in stoneworking and a lack of transitional developmental stages. It appears as though an ancient culture possessed universal principles of construction, which were later passed to different civilizations that eventually forgot their true purpose. Archaeologists cautiously use the term technological leap, a phenomenon in which mastery appears suddenly, without gradual evolution. In Kundana, this leap is unmistakable. There are no signs of primitive attempts or transitional forms. It is as if someone suddenly brought complete knowledge, then vanished, leaving only the trace of their presence behind. There is also a bolder theory. According to it, Kundana may not have been a temple at all, but a kind of information repository. Scholars studying the structure of the halls note their resemblance to the internal geometry of a crystal. The rock from which the caves are carved contains quartz, a material capable of storing and transmitting vibrations. Perhaps the builders understood these properties and used them to record sound or energy. In that case, the walls of Kundana are not merely architecture, but a kind of memory medium, one that we have yet to learn how to read. For most academics, such hypotheses lie outside the boundaries of science. Yet it is precisely these ideas that inspire new researchers to return to Kundana again and again. For if even part of these suppositions is true, then what stands before us is not merely a religious monument, but evidence of a civilization whose knowledge may have surpassed our own. In that light, Kundana becomes not a relic of the past, but a reminder of a future that has already been. When archaeologists first began the systematic study of Kundana, they were struck by the condition of the rock itself. Unlike other cave complexes carved from basalt, this one shows numerous cracks, warps, and areas where the stone seems to have swelled from within. These deformations do not resemble earthquake damage, they are not chaotic. On the contrary, they appear directed, as if a wave of heat or pressure had risen from the depths. Geologists have long debated whether this was the result of a natural catastrophe or of some unknown form of activity. Mid-20th century reports record traces of charring in the upper layers of Kundana's corridors. Strikingly, the lower halls show no such marks, suggesting that the impact came from above, perhaps from the atmosphere. Yet there are no craters above the caves to indicate a meteor strike. The fire hypothesis also fails to hold up. There is no evidence of charcoal, and the walls are not coated with soot but with a dark, glassy film as though the stone had melted. The temperature required for such vitrification would exceed 2000 degrees Celsius, impossible under normal natural conditions. Some researchers link these traces to ancient tectonic gas eruptions, which could have produced sudden flashes and rapid heating of the air. But in that case, the melting should appear chaotic. Instead, in Kundana it forms precise, continuous bands along the vaults. Such orderly distribution looks more like the result of a directed beam or a wave of energy. If this truly was the aftermath of a catastrophe, it must have been local and governed by an unknown kind of physics. There is another sign, long overlooked. On several columns, traces of later repair are visible. The stone layer in these areas differs slightly in structure, as if someone tried to restore damaged sections. Analysis revealed that the rock there contains less quartz and more iron. This may indicate that the repairs were made centuries after the original construction. That raises a provocative question: who undertook the restoration, and why? Could monks have possessed a technique allowing them to replace fragments of basalt so perfectly that they fused with the original stone like an ancient form of concrete? Elsewhere on the walls, strange marks appear, signs of high-temperature exposure with sharply defined boundaries. In one side chamber, at roughly human height, runs a horizontal line. Above it, the rock is lighter; below, it is darker and denser. This may represent a waterline, suggesting that Kundana was once submerged. Indeed, geologists found mineral residues typical of saltwater in the lower layers. Yet the sea lies far away. This implies that, in the distant past, the region may have suffered a vast hydrodynamic disaster, perhaps a time when part of the Indian plateau was covered by the ocean. That hypothesis finds indirect echoes in myth. Ancient South Indian texts describe a flood that destroyed a stone-carved city on the shore. The water entered the ears of the mountain and extinguished its heart. Scholars interpret this as a poetic account of the cave's inundation. Perhaps, after the catastrophe, the complex remained underwater for centuries before re-emerging as sea levels receded. In that case, the vitrified surfaces could be explained not by fire, but by chemical reactions between basalt and hot flows of sulfur or steam. Yet there are other kinds of traces. In some corridors, the rock surface appears scorched with patterns. Microscopic analysis detected metallic residues not found in surrounding formations, among them nickel and titanium, elements extremely rare in the natural deposits of Maharashtra. These findings have given rise to a theory of interaction with a high-energy source, possibly an object that fell from the sky. If that is true, Kundana may have endured the impact of an unknown body or a powerful burst of energy that obliterated part of its upper structure. Modern satellite imagery reveals faint circular anomalies in the soil surrounding Kundana, extending several kilometers from the caves. Though barely visible, they form nearly perfect rings up to 5 kilometers in diameter. Geophysicists have yet to offer an explanation. These formations might mark the remnants of an ancient crater or perhaps the trace of a massive electromagnetic discharge. Today, Kundana appears serene, yet beneath this calm lies a subtle tension. Cracks along the vaults whisper of a great impact long past. Local guides sometimes claim that during thunderstorms, lightning often strikes above the caves, as if something in the rock itself attracts electricity. Perhaps the stone retains a charge left from that ancient catastrophe. Or perhaps the very earth remembers when this hill was the heart of a vast explosion that reshaped the land around it. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: the Kundana caves are not merely an architectural monument. They are a scar upon the body of the planet, a frozen story of contact with something beyond human comprehension. And while scientists continue to argue whether the phenomenon is natural or the mark of an alien force, the caves remain silent, preserving a mystery that has outlived time, fire, and water. Every attempt to explain Kundana's origin returns to the same question: who could have created such a thing? No texts, no legends mention the names of its builders. Buddhist chronicles speak only of monks who used the halls for meditation, but even they never claim to have carved them. Ancient records from Lonavala refer to a forgotten people said to speak to stone. They were called the keepers of the mountains. No artifacts of theirs remain, only the caves themselves. Supporters of the official version maintain that the construction was carried out by Buddhist communities under the patronage of the Satavahana dynasty. These people had organization and faith, but not advanced technology. Thus, scholars suggest that the work may have spanned centuries. Yet the structure tells a different story. Across every level, there is a single architectural logic, no variations in style or material. If generations had built it, differences and errors would be inevitable. Kandana appears as though it was carved swiftly, following a unified, predetermined design. Some researchers propose that Kandana was built by priests of forgotten cults that existed long before Buddhism. Perhaps they belonged to a society where architecture was not a craft but a sacred science. For them, stone was not merely a material, it was a mediator between worlds. Each hall and niche served a specific purpose related to energy and sound. In this sense, Kandana resembles not a monastery but a device, something that could be activated. What it once did, however, remains unknown. There is also a more symbolic theory. Some Indian philosophers believe Kandana is not the work of a single people, but the result of a collective consciousness directed toward creating a meditative space. In their view, the complex mirrors the structure of the human mind, the central hall represents the center of perception, the corridors the pathways of thought, and the outer chambers the reflections of inner states. If so, the builders may have acted not in worship of gods, but in pursuit of an experiment with the very nature of awareness itself. But there is another, more unsettling hypothesis. According to it, Kandana may be the remnant of a technological base belonging to a civilization that possessed knowledge of energy transformation. Numerous traces of heat exposure and the geometric precision of its form support this version. Perhaps these caves were part of a complex where experiments with vibration and light were conducted. If so, the later religious use of the site was merely a secondary phase. The monks may have arrived long after the true purpose of the structure had been forgotten. Some researchers studying regional maps have noticed that Kandana lies at the intersection of lines connecting other ancient monuments. These lines form a geometric pattern resembling a perfect hexagon. At the center of this configuration is an old crater, now hidden beneath layers of vegetation. It is possible that the builders oriented their work according to the stars or the energy currents of the Earth. In that case, the caves might have served as a node, a point where the planet's forces converged. Supporting this theory is the magnetic anomaly detected by measuring instruments. If we assume that the builders understood the interaction between sound and form, the purpose of the complex becomes clearer. It may have functioned as a resonator, generating vibrations capable of influencing consciousness or even matter. The main hall, with its domed ceiling, is perfectly shaped to amplify specific frequencies. When a person speaks in the center, the sound returns magnified many times over. Perhaps that was the intent, to create a place where the earth itself could respond to the human voice. Why this was done remains an open question. Maybe the ancients sought harmony between humanity and nature. Or perhaps they created an instrument for communication with something beyond this world. Some regional myths speak of beings who descended from the sky and taught people how to speak to stone. These tales sound like legends, yet in light of Kandana's architectural precision, they gain a different resonance. To some, the builders were enlightened masters, to others, engineers of a vanished epoch, to still others not human at all. Whatever the explanation, one fact remains: the Kandana complex was built with a level of knowledge far beyond what is known from its supposed time. Whoever they were, their vision has survived through the centuries. When a person steps into the cool shadow of these halls today, it feels like entering into a dialogue with those who once saw the world differently. Perhaps that was their purpose, to ensure their voice would not be lost in time. When the last beam of light from a flashlight fades and darkness thickens inside the caves, Kandana ceases to be mere stone. It becomes a feeling, quiet, deep, elusive. Every whisper, every echo of a footstep seems to return as the breath of something ancient. Here, the boundary between past and present dissolves. What we call history feels like a thin film stretched over something far older than human memory. Scientists strive to view Kandana rationally. They measure angles, record tool marks, analyze the chemical composition of the rock. They find evidence of natural processes but cannot fully explain them. The consensus remains that the caves were made by human hands. Yet this conclusion does not dispel the mystery, it deepens it. For the more one studies Kandana, the stronger the sense that human effort here is intertwined with something greater than simple physics. Mysticism does not contradict science if one treats it as another form of knowledge. The legends of builders who descended from the sky may be taken as symbols, but symbols too carry truth. Perhaps the ancients saw what we cannot see, sensed laws that we have not yet named. In their hands, sound and light were not metaphors but instruments. Science calls this superstition, yet it too encounters facts that defy logic. When the magnetic field inside the caves shifts without visible cause, instruments record it but cannot explain it. When light strikes the stupa precisely on the day of the equinox, it is dismissed as coincidence. But too many coincidences begin to form a pattern. The balance between mystery and fact in Kundana can be felt in the air itself. Some perceive these halls as a temple, others as a laboratory of ancient knowledge. Perhaps they are all correct. For some, the sound of prayer was a path to enlightenment, for others, the same sound was a formula for interacting with matter. The ancient world did not divide the sacred from the scientific. What we now call magic might once have been another science forgotten over the centuries. Kundana reminds us that truth is rarely one-sided. The stone holds multiple layers of meaning. For an archaeologist, it is an artifact, for a historian, a monument, for a mystic, a portal. Yet all these definitions refer to the same phenomenon, one that exists regardless of belief. That is its power. The caves need no defense of theories. They simply are, and by their very existence, they challenge the limits of our understanding. Perhaps that is their true purpose, to remind us that knowledge is not a destination but a journey. Humanity came to these mountains seeking answers and found only new questions. Who built Kundana? By what means? For what reason? We may never know. Yet the attempt to understand already brings us closer to those who once shaped this stone world. Today, Kundana remains silent. Its columns fade with time, moss slowly covers the floor, and only the wind carries an invisible song through its corridors. In that whisper there is no secret, only a reminder: the boundary between mysticism and science lies not in stone, but within ourselves. It depends on the question with which we step inside. For some, Kundana will remain an ancient monastery; for others, proof that humanity once touched knowledge it is not yet ready to comprehend. And perhaps one day, when we learn to listen not only with our ears but with our memory, the caves will truly open. Then Kundana's silence will speak, and we will finally hear the answer it has kept for thousands of years. Not the answer to who built it, but why humans create wonders at all, to remember that they are capable of the impossible. To prove to themselves that even within stone, light can live. If stone can hold memory, perhaps it remembers us too. What do you think? Who left this mark in Kundana? Share your theory in the comments and subscribe. The next story is closer than you think.